Welcome to this edition of On the Record. My special guest today is David Sweet, the MP for, let me get this straight, David, for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Westdale.
All right.
And our extra special guest today is Ron Watkins, President of the Canadian Steel Producers Association. Welcome to the show, Ron. Now let's get right down to it. Ron, Canadian Steel Producers Association, long title. What are you involved with?
Well, the Canadian Steel Producers Association is the national voice for Canada's steel producing industry, as well as for the people who manufacture steel pipe and tube. So we have 10 members. We have members with steelmaking facilities in the provinces from Alberta right through to Quebec. Obviously a strong concentration here in Ontario and very much in this region of Ontario. And our role is essentially to work towards public policies that will be supportive of the growth and the competitiveness of the steel industry. So we're quite active in terms of our participation, certainly with the federal government and increasingly with the provincial governments.
And David, last time you were on, we had talked about the Parliamentary Steel Caucus, which you're the chair of. And how does that interact with with Ron's association?
Well, we really attempt to interact with both the steel producers and steel workers, and it's an all-party caucus. And our job really is to, raise the awareness of the issues of the steel industry, to make sure that the government is aware of that, and that we're pursuing policies that's going to help the flourishing in the industry, to help them to be not only economically viable, but very competitive, particularly with the global marketplace the way it is. And that helps the steel producers as well as create jobs for the steel workers.
And that must be a huge challenge. How's he doing, Ron? is he doing all right as chair of the...
That's correct. And I think one of the important features of the Steel Caucus is it's all parties, and so and because it's important to us to have support, obviously, across the House of Commons, so to speak. And David does a very good job of balancing off the partisan versus the policy issues, and we focus on policy, and it's a very productive group for us.
And David, I would assume without cameras there, you can be nonpartisan and get down to business, well, and really help the steel producers, who in turn help us.
Absolutely. Well, we need to be, and I believe that throughout the nation, that every party that there's steel manufacturing or producing with members of parliament from all parties.
That's correct.
Yeah. And Ron, what is the impact of the steel industry in Canada?
Well, it's a very important industry to Canada, and it's important in two ways, in our view. I mean, first of all, there's the direct impact. Obviously, 2009 was a tough year, but in sort of the most recent, sort of normal year, if you can call it that, we employed upwards of 30,000 Canadians across the country. We figure for every one of those jobs, there's another 4 jobs created. So the indirect impact of that, just in job terms, is significant. We produce about $13.5 to $14 billion worth of steel per year, and about half of that is exported. So that's kind of the economics of it.
Who's our major customer?
We operate in clusters. That really goes to a second form of impact, which is our relationship to the supply chain of so many other industries. And so if you look at industries like automotive, it's a heavily steel-based product and industry. The machinery and equipment industry. Energy is a very important sector, very steel-intense, mining. So kind of all the major industrial clusters in the country really have a steel backbone to them.
Yes, yeah.
And that's as much our impact, I think, as the raw numbers, if I could put it in those terms.
Yeah. David, you mentioned about the international aspect of, pardon me, of the steel industry. Who are our major competitors that are manufacturing steel?
Well, I think obviously any country that has steel producers in it would be a competitor, but One of the ones that's most challenging, of course, is the Chinese industry, the amount that they actually produce, as well as we've had some trade actions with steel production from China. So that's one of the most challenging files that we have, and one that Ron and I have talked about quite a bit. And of course, we've talked to ministers regarding as well. And that'll, as long as this industry matures in other countries, then there'll be challenges like that we have to deal with.
But it is important to maintain that presence uppermost in politicians' minds, but in the public's mind as well, because it does add to our gross national product significantly, doesn't it?
Well, I think what Ron alluded to, I would just use one different term. Of course, but I am really a layman in steel. But it's a foundational product in automotive manufacturing, in infrastructure, in energy. So, and it's the most recyclable material. I mean, you can take 100% of steel and reduce it back to its base form and reproduce it again. So it's extremely important that we not only stay aware of it, but that we're conscious of the policies that impact steel, impact all those downstream industries as well.
And that must be important to you as well, Ron, the fact that that greening of the steel industry, which we don't normally think of in the steel industry as being that recycled material.
Yeah, no, there are several elements to our environmental story. I mean, first of all, is obviously everybody's concerns with climate change, with air pollution and so on. And we've made very strong progress in our industry over the past several years. I mean, if you go back to sort of the early 1990s compared to now, our energy efficiencies improved by about 25%. On various forms of air pollutants, we're anywhere from kind of 15 to 85% better. Our water efficiency, water usage things are strong too. You've mentioned as well scrap, which is a really an important part of the steel industry. We recycle about 8 million tons of scrap steel per year. Steel is the most recycled product in the world. According to the World Steel Association, more than aluminum, glass, and paper combined.
Really?
So it's a very recyclable material.
I think it's important that we get that out there. That's an important aspect of your business.
Well, what's really a terrific property of steel is it's infinitely recyclable. I mean, you can use it, you can remelt it, and you produce steel for additional uses. And so the steel beams and bars that are kind of supporting a studio like this could well be made from recycled steel that used to be an automotive product, right? So it's a strong part of our story. The other thing we're doing just on the scrap theme is historically one of the things that used to happen is you had mercury switches in cars. They were called switches, but for convenience lighting and such. And we've got a program we're running with the Vehicle Manufacturers Association to say, look, we don't want any of that mercury in our scrap stream. And so we're having it taken out at source before it goes into the mill. So we're very conscious of certainly the scrap stream and recycling.
And all of those aspects of recycling. David, as chair of the Parliamentary Steel Caucus, what are the issues that you're dealing with at the federal level in terms of steel production?
Well, I think we've mentioned environment, we've mentioned trade.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things, and we just made an announcement yesterday regarding that, is to make sure that we have an adequately skilled workforce as well. The steel industry is one of those industries that's evolving quickly, and the technology is moving at a rapid pace.
As it is with everything these days,
absolutely.
it seems, yeah.
And we need skilled workers for that industry. And yesterday, in fact, we announced $2 million at the CSTEC announcement, which is the Steel Sector Council, and that's to help the steel industry actually finance new apprentices who will learn these new technologies and be ready for the future. And not only that, we've also implemented through our government legislation grants to new apprentices, so that for the future we have those skilled, Red Seal trades available, not only for the steel industry but for other industries in Canada as well, where we have this great shortage of skilled workers.
But Ron, to get to the skilled workforce, that must be a difficult thing. It's great to have the technology, but if you don't have the people to implement that technology, you're stuck.
Absolutely, and we've got fundamentally, I think, two challenges on that score, two broad challenges. The first is, just as with a lot of industries, I mean, the demographics are that we will have a good part of the existing skilled workforce will be reaching retirement years over the next very few years. And so if everything else held constant, you'd still have a replenishment issue, so to speak. But the other feature, and I think David was speaking to this, is the workforce of the future in steel and in advanced manufacturing needs to be more highly skilled on average, needs a greater range of technical skills, of process management skills. One of the things lost on people often, I think, is that the concept of advanced or high technology industry, they think of information technology and biotech, and no question.
Yeah.
But modern manufacturing is a very advanced technology, a knowledge-intense industry, and we need workers that can work in that environment. And we need to attract them to the manufacturing sector. And so that's why programs such as the one that David mentioned that the government's supporting are very important to building for the future.
Well, how has, we've just come through, and for some people we haven't actually come through the recession, we're still in it. And I'm just wondering how that has affected the steel industry with the how close you are to the automotive industry when it takes a downturn, and so that must have been a difficult time for you, or is it still a difficult time for you?
Well, it was certainly much more difficult a year ago than it is today. We've recovered obviously somewhat. We're not back to where we want to get to. Some of the estimates are we won't reach kind of pre-crisis production levels in North America until a few more years from now, just as an example. You drew the important linkage that we're only as good as our customers in some respects. I mean, we don't sell directly to consumers out of the steel mills. We sell to the automotive industry, to the other industries. So we certainly felt the recessionary experience of the automotive sector. Energy took its turn. Even parts of construction did, because it's not just what was happening in Canada, but because we also sell into the U.S., what was happening to U.S. markets was also important to us. So just in order of, just to give a quick quantification, if I could, just to elaborate, before the crisis, we look at capacity utilization rates in North America for the steel industry, and we were running in the upper 80% at that point. In the depth of the recession, that had dropped to about 41, 42%.
Ooh,
so about 50%.
That's awfully large.
We're back into the low 70s at this point, but it's not back to certainly where we were. So it's better, and I think there's evidence of that obviously locally here, but we've still got some improvement to go, and we're all clearly looking for the economy to recover.
David, when we talk steel, Stelco, DeFasco, they're the two names that come to mind, and you being the member of Parliament for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Westdale. I'm going to get that right at one point. You must deal with them quite a lot, and how are they faring during the recession?
Well, I think Ron mentioned that the production was way down in the 40% range, so they were doing their best to obviously try to keep workers busy. Two different companies, so there's two different dimensions there. But they were in the same position as the rest of the steel manufacturers, and even Taylor Steel, who's a finisher in Hamilton as well, was going through that. I think on the brighter side, one of the things that we see with the development of the rest of the world, as well as, of course, the increase in demand here in domestically, when I say domestically, I really mean the entire North America, that by 2050, we're estimating that the demand will double. So we're poised right now, I believe Canadian steel producers are poised in a place where they are on the vanguard of innovation, that they can find some unique markets for a very high quality product, and that's really what I want to see. That's one of the reasons why I worked hard to get the Canada Metallurgical Labs moved here, because I believe that this is the role that we can play on the global stage really define our value-added prospect and make sure that we always have those unique niche markets where our steel producers can compete on the top level with anybody else.